Hello, everyone. Tonight we are stepping right into the chill and dark of a medieval morning. You shuffle along the cold stone floor of your small cottage, the air thick with the smell of damp straw and last night's dying embers. Outside, the sky is still the deep indigo of night, and the only light is a thin slice of moon slipping behind the thatch. Your breath fogs in the cold air as you slip on worn wooden clogs, careful not to wake the children tangled in blankets nearby. Before the village stirs, you are already moving, feeding chickens, hauling water from the well, and coaxing the stubborn fire back to life with twigs and moss. You probably won't survive a week if you think this is a gentle wake-up call. The medieval dawn is not for the faint-hearted. It's a full-on assault on your senses, your muscles, and your patience. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I'm curious how many of you are starting your day in sunlight while I'm here with frost nipping at my nose. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You begin by rousing the animals. The chickens cluck impatiently, already awake and scratching at the dirt. You gather the eggs with careful fingers, noting a few cracked ones. Great, breakfast just got a little smaller. The smell of manure fills the small yard, a scent that will follow you all day, whether you like it or not. You scoop handfuls of hay and scatter feed, whispering quiet greetings to the animals like old friends who don't answer back. Water hauling is a marathon, not a sprint. You drag a wooden bucket, heavy and leaking from last week's patch job, down the slippery path to the village well. The stone rim is worn smooth from centuries of hands, but the water inside is as fresh and biting cold as ever. Balancing the bucket, you head back, mindful not to spill this precious liquid. Water is life, after all. The village well is a communal lifeline, and sometimes arguments spark over waiting turns or someone forgetting to clean up after themselves. Historians still debate whether the communal well was the earliest form of social networking or just a recipe for constant petty fights. Back in the kitchen, you tend to the fire. Starting it is an art form, requiring dry twigs, a flint, and the patience of a saint. You breathe on the small sparks until they catch, and soon the hearth glows orange, ready for the day's cooking. Fire is your ally but also your greatest danger. House fires were a common and terrifying threat in medieval homes, especially those built mostly of wood and straw. You keep a bucket of sand nearby just in case, because water is too precious to waste dousing flames. Your kitchen smells of smoke and wood as you prepare the first meal. Medieval breakfasts were nothing like today's cereal bowls or coffee mugs. More often, it was a hunk of stale bread, some cheese if you were lucky, and perhaps a bit of ale or watered-down wine for the adults. You nibble on a dry crust, grateful for the sustenance. Oddly, the medieval palate often included surprisingly spicy and exotic flavors. Pepper was a prized and expensive import from the East, used sparingly but with great delight. Imagine that, peppercorns traveling thousands of miles just to jazz up your morning porridge. Outside, the village is slowly waking. The roosters crow, dogs bark, and somewhere a smith's hammer clangs on anvil, ringing through the crisp air. You glance at the sky, where the first pale light threatens the horizon. Your day has already begun long before the sun will rise. Despite all the toil, the medieval housewife was the backbone of her household and village. You manage more than just chores, you are nurse, cook, mediator, and sometimes even accountant. And yes, you might have to wrestle a pig once in a while. It's a lot to juggle before breakfast. You step out to the garden patch to pull a few weeds and gather herbs. You recognize yarrow and chamomile, useful for healing, if the village healer is too busy or too far. Herbal medicine was the primary healthcare of the time, but historians still debate whether these remedies were mostly placebo or surprisingly effective. Either way, you're glad to have those plants nearby. You pause a moment to listen. The village is a patchwork of sounds, children crying, water spilling, merchants shouting. You feel the weight of invisible threads tying you to every person around you. Your early morning work keeps the village alive. And as the sun finally peaks above the rooftops, you prepare yourself for the next round: bread baking, food preparation, and endless chores. But for now, you breathe in the cold morning air, savoring the brief quiet before the day swells and roars. Oh, and quick fun fact, did you know medieval people often believed that bad smells caused diseases, so they carried herbs to their noses as a kind of early air freshener? So much for stop and smell the roses, when the roses might actually be the plague. You shake off the chill and step inside, ready for the fire to blaze hotter and the day to truly begin. Remember that fire safety bucket? You glance at it one last time before the smoke thickens. The warmth from the hearth seeps into your chilled bones as you roll up your sleeves and turn your attention to the day's bread baking. This is no casual affair. Bread is the lifeblood of your household, and without it, the day would collapse into hunger and despair. You mix coarse flour with water from the well, your hands pressing and folding the sticky dough with a rhythm passed down through generations. The grains are rough beneath your fingers. Medieval flour wasn't refined like today's white powder, so expect grit and a hearty chew in every bite. The aroma of yeast is almost non-existent here. Sourdough was a more common leavening agent, made from wild yeasts captured from the air. And don't get me started on how long it takes, hours, if you're lucky. After kneading, you cover the dough with a linen cloth, leaving it to rise in a warm corner near the fire. You steal a moment to watch the sun climb higher, casting light through the small, shuttered window and catching dust motes that dance lazily in the kitchen air. This slow, quiet waiting contrasts sharply with the frenetic pace you'll have in an hour when it's time to bake. You walk outside with a small basket of dough to the village communal oven, a bulky stone structure blackened from years of use. It's a ritual. Each household has a scheduled day to use the oven, and you are grateful for the system. Baking bread at home was often impractical or dangerous due to fire risk and limited space. As you approach, you see other women waiting, baskets and wooden paddles in hand. The air buzzes with gossip and competition over whose bread will come out best, crisp and brown with a tender crumb inside. Sliding your dough into the oven's glowing belly requires skill. Too close to the fire, and the bread burns; too far, and it won't cook through. You tap the wooden peel against the stone to loosen the loaf and pull it out with a flourish, the crust crackling. Success. Bread was a staple but hardly a luxury. Peasants often ate black bread, made from rye or barley, which was dense and bitter compared to the white wheat breads favored by the wealthy. Historians still debate whether medieval diets were healthy or malnourished. One thing is clear: bread was the foundation of survival. While waiting for your bread, you prepare what little else the family will eat: grains, a bit of salted pork, some root vegetables pulled from the cellar. No one here will be having anything fancy like fruits flown in from distant lands or exotic spices beyond the occasional pinch of pepper. Though, speaking of spices, here's an odd fact: cinnamon and cloves were so prized in medieval Europe that they sometimes doubled as currency. Imagine paying your rent in cinnamon sticks. Your cooking is complicated by a kitchen with minimal tools, a rough wooden table, a mortar and pestle, iron pots, and clay dishes. No electric mixers or refrigerators here. Everything requires muscle and patience. You grind herbs for seasoning and occasionally add a splash of ale to the stew to mask the toughness of root vegetables. You glance at your hands, calloused and stained from years of work. Yet, these hands shape the very sustenance of your family. You are both chef and scientist, mixing ingredients that can nourish or poison if handled wrong. Food preservation is also on your mind, especially with winter's chill creeping closer. As you work, the village noise grows louder. Children chase chickens, dogs bark, and merchants set up stalls for the upcoming market day. You steal snippets of conversation, a scolding here, a joke there. Village life is messy and loud, and the kitchen is your sanctuary amid the chaos. Remember how I mentioned the communal oven? It's not just about efficiency, it's a community ritual. Sharing space to bake bread reinforces social bonds but also fuels rivalries and gossip. Women trade recipes and tips, but the sharpest tongues are reserved for critiquing each other's loaves. Bread envy is a thing. An odd medieval tidbit: bakers sometimes used crocodile dung as a leavening agent before yeast was widely understood. Let's just say that's one recipe you don't want to try. Thankfully, by your time, that practice had mostly faded into history, or so you hope. By mid-morning, your bread is baked to a golden crust, cooling on a wooden board. You break off a piece, the smell warm and comforting. This humble loaf will fuel long hours of labor, gossip, and more fire tending. The smell of fresh bread drifts through the village, a small victory amid the constant struggle. Your work ensures that hunger is kept at bay, if only for a few hours. Tomorrow will bring the same dance, but for now, you savor the moment. The scent of your freshly baked bread still clinging to your fingertips, you move on to the next vital part of your day, tending to the sick and mending wounds with whatever herbs and potions you can muster. In the medieval world, you're part nurse, part apothecary, armed with knowledge that is equal parts science, superstition, and ancient lore. You don't have a medical degree, of course, but the village depends on you to patch cuts, soothe fevers, and chase away the mysterious, bad humors that doctors claim are behind most illnesses. You start by collecting herbs from your small garden patch, a mishmash of chamomile, yarrow, and rue. Chamomile calms, yarrow staunches bleeding, and rue, well, rue has a complicated reputation. Some swear by its power, others whisper it's a bit too strong for comfort. You crush leaves with your mortar and pestle, the scent pungent and earthy, mixing them into poultices and teas. You might not realize it, but some of these plants actually have real medicinal properties. Willow bark, for example, contains a chemical similar to aspirin. Historians still debate whether medieval herbal remedies had actual efficacy or if they worked mostly by placebo and faith. As you prepare a poultice, a child nearby cries out, a scraped knee from a tumble in the yard. You kneel down, wiping the dirt away gently, applying the herbal mixture with practiced hands. There, that'll help the swelling, you say softly, hoping it's enough. You wish you could do more, but plague and infections often outpace the best care you can provide. It's a constant battle against invisible enemies. The odd thing is, while you rely on plants, some medieval remedies were downright bizarre. Ever heard of using crushed spiders to treat toothaches? Or wearing a dead mouse in a cloth pouch for protection against the plague? You might roll your eyes now, but back then, desperate times called for desperate measures. Sometimes it's hard to separate real healing from old wives' tales. Your knowledge isn't just practical, it's inherited. Mothers teach daughters, village healers teach apprentices, and books are rare and precious. The church often frowned upon herbal healing, warning of witches and heresy. Yet, you work quietly, balancing faith and folk medicine, a subtle rebellion in your hands. As you tend the household, you hear the bell toll from the church tower, the call to midday prayer. Faith weaves through every aspect of life. You often say a quick prayer for the health of your family, even as you mix your herbal salves. The blending of religion and medicine is so intertwined that separating them feels impossible. Here's a quirky medieval fact: they believed that the phases of the moon influenced health and healing. Planting herbs, cutting hair, even scheduling surgeries sometimes followed lunar calendars. Imagine timing your doctor's appointment by the moon phase. While tending the sick, you also maintain records of who's been ill and what treatments you've tried, scribbled on scraps of parchment or sometimes just memorized. Literacy isn't common among women here, but a few of you have learned to write enough to keep track. That little skill can be a lifesaver in chaotic times. Your day's healing work doesn't stop with poultices. You prepare bitters for digestion, teas for colds, and sometimes you'll make incense to fumigate the house after an illness. The smell of herbs burning is meant to purify the air, though whether it actually does is still a matter of debate. And speaking of scents, remember the medieval air freshener from last section? This time, you use a mixture of lavender and rosemary to mask the inevitable odors of sickness and cooking. Medieval houses didn't have plumbing, so smells were a constant companion, a fact that keeps you laughing in the darkest moments. The burden of healing weighs on you, each cured fever is a small victory, each lost child, a heartbreak. Still, you carry on, knowing that your work is vital, even if it's hidden from the official annals of history. You pause to look out the window as the sun climbs high, casting warm light on your garden herbs. Somewhere beyond the fields, the village buzzes with life, markets, prayers, disputes. But here, in your small patch of earth and remedy, you hold the power to soothe and save. So, you gather your pots and dried plants, ready for the next part of the day, knowing that illness waits for no one, and neither can you. The echoes of children's laughter and cries ripple through the village as you turn your attention to the youngest members of your household. Childcare is no light task, especially when you're balancing a dozen other duties. You're not just feeding and clothing these tiny humans, you're their first teacher, their guide, and their guardian in a world that can be unforgiving. You start by gently waking the little ones, their faces pressed into rough wool blankets, hair tangled and eyes heavy with sleep. You softly brush dirt and stray hairs from their cheeks, whispering words that will soon turn into lessons. Teaching manners, faith, and practical skills happens in every moment, between meals, during chores, even while gathering firewood. You're molding not just children but future villagers, and the weight of that responsibility hums beneath your skin. Education isn't formal here, there's no schoolhouse with chalkboards. Instead, children learn through observation, repetition, and stories. You recite tales of saints, brave knights, and village legends, weaving morality and hope into each sentence. These stories are their textbooks, their entertainment, and their social glue. Historians still debate how much literacy actually spread among the peasant classes, but oral tradition is undeniable and powerful. You teach your daughter to spin wool, your son to help with feeding animals. Even the toddlers carry small baskets or wooden spoons, eager to help you. It's a balancing act of patience and firmness, knowing that some lessons will stick while others need repeating daily. The odd thing about medieval childhood is that kids were expected to grow up fast. By the age of 7, many were already working alongside adults, learning trades and household management. Playtime existed, but it was brief and often mixed with chores. Games involved sticks, stones, and imagination, no toys shipped in from China or plastic nonsense here. You pause, watching a child trip over a chicken, laughing despite the minor tumble. Their resilience is astounding. You know the harsh reality, infant mortality rates were terrifyingly high, and the plague could sweep through villages without warning. But for now, you hold hope in their bright eyes. Feeding the children means stretching your scarce resources even thinner. Milk is precious, and you guard it jealously, often reserving it for the youngest or sickest. Bread and porridge fill hungry bellies, sometimes flavored with a handful of wild berries or herbs. You do what you can to shield them from the hardships you endure. You recall an odd fact: medieval parents often used puppets, small homemade dolls, as teaching tools or to comfort children during illnesses. Sometimes these dolls were carried everywhere, almost like talismans. It's a touching glimpse into childhood fears and hopes, despite the brutal reality outside the cottage walls. In the evenings, you gather the family around the hearth, where shadows dance on the walls as you tell stories or teach prayers. These moments knit you all closer, building a shield of love against the world's harshness. You're also a mediator. When squabbles break out among siblings or neighbors' children, you step in with firm but gentle hands. Teaching conflict resolution might not be in any medieval handbook, but it's essential knowledge if you want peace in your household. And despite all the hard work, there's laughter and joy, children's shrieks chasing chickens, impromptu songs hummed as they help with chores, the comfort of shared stories. You hold on to these moments tightly, they're the fuel that keeps you going. As you tuck a small child into a bundle of blankets later, you wonder what future awaits them. Will they escape the cycle of toil and hardship? Or will they live lives much like your own, balancing survival with fleeting happiness? For now, you prepare for the next wave of work, spinning and weaving cloth, crafting garments by hand. But the imprint of your children's smiles lingers, a soft light in your relentless day. You settle into the rhythmic, almost hypnotic task of spinning wool, the ancient wool creaking beneath your fingers as you draw out fiber, twisting it into thread. The air around you is thick with the soft, earthy scent of sheep's fleece, mingling with the faint smoke drifting from the hearth. This is no simple hobby. Spinning and weaving are the backbone of your household's clothing, and you're the master craftsman of your family's fabric needs. Every stitch, every patch, every worn-out garment that you mend is a testament to your skill and resourcefulness. You pull the raw wool closer, fingers nimble but steady. Wool is an imperfect material, prone to shedding and unevenness, but it's what you have. Cotton is a distant dream, and silk is a luxury for the wealthy lords and ladies, not for your hands. The flax you grow for linen fibers is another labor-intensive project, breaking, scutching, and hackling the plant before the threads can be spun. Your hands are rough, calloused from years of spinning, weaving, and sewing, but they work with a quiet grace. You remember how textile work shapes the entire village economy. Women like you are not only making clothes for their families but often producing goods for trade or sale. The quality of your cloth can mean the difference between a warm winter or frostbite, a proud presentation at market or whispered village critiques. And yes, historians still debate whether textile work was mostly a social activity or a solitary, arduous chore. For you, it's a bit of both. You sometimes weave with others in the common room, sharing stories and complaints, but much of the work happens alone, in the quiet dark hours. Mending is an art you've perfected. You patch holes with scraps salvaged from old clothing, turning what others might see as useless into something wearable again. Every tear tells a story, the time your husband tripped on a barn ladder or your son's scuffle with a neighbor's dog. You stitch carefully, using linen thread or sometimes even fine horsehair if nothing else is available. You keep a small basket of dyed threads near your loom. Indigo, madder, and woad are the plants that color your fabrics, though colors are muted and often fade quickly. Bright, vibrant clothes are the mark of wealth and status, so you're grateful for any splash of color, however fleeting. Oddly, spinning has a rich place in folklore and superstition. The spinning wheel is said to hold magical power, and you've heard tales of women cursed to spin endlessly or a sinister figure named the Fates, who spin the threads of life itself. You smile wryly, thinking your fingers might be controlling your own fate more than any mysterious goddess. The village children occasionally come by to watch or to try their hand at spinning. You encourage them, knowing that these skills might one day support their own families. But the work is demanding, long hours bent over wheel and loom, eyes straining in dim light, fingers aching from repetitive motions. As dusk falls, you set aside the spinning wheel and begin sewing the day's mending onto clothing. You stitch in patches, replace missing buttons, often just tied bits of string, and reinforce seams ready to burst. It's a never-ending cycle, but one that keeps your family clothed and presentable, a vital defense against cold and shame. An odd fact, in some regions, unmarried women were expected to spin a certain amount of wool before they could be considered eligible for marriage, a kind of textile choreography, proving their industriousness. You chuckle to think how much faster some might have got a suitor if only they could outsource the spinning. As you finish the last seam, the firelight flickers on the worn fabric, and you feel a quiet pride in your handiwork. The clothes may not be luxurious, but they're made with care, resilience, and love, just like you. The day's weaving and mending done, you glance out at the darkening village. The smoke rising from other chimneys signals the end of day, but for you, the work is far from over. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but tonight, the comfort of soft wool and the glow of the hearth provide a small reprieve. The dawn's chores behind you, you make your way toward the bustling heart of the village, the market square. Market day is the lifeblood of your social and economic existence, a whirl of voices, colors, and smells where you barter goods and weave the social tapestry just as deftly as you handle your wares. You carry a basket woven from reeds, filled with your carefully crafted cloth, some fresh eggs, and a small jar of honey. The hum of anticipation buzzes through the air. As you step onto the muddy street, the cacophony swells. Vendors shout prices and tout their wares, fragrant spices, freshly caught fish, coarse pottery, and bundles of herbs. Children dart through the crowds, vendors haggle, and neighbors gossip with the fervor of seasoned diplomats. Market day is as much about news and alliances as it is about trade. You know every face, every whisper, every grudging smile. Your first stop is the grain merchant, a stout man with a red face and an unrelenting gaze. You barter eggs for barley flour, mindful of how many coins you have jingling in your pouch. Money is scarce, and every coin counts. Sometimes you trade goods directly, a practice common in the village economy. The medieval economy relied heavily on barter, but coins, often silver pennies, were prized for convenience, even if small in value. Navigating the market involves delicate social maneuvering. You nod at the blacksmith's wife, exchange a knowing glance with the miller's daughter, and avoid the merchant who still blames you for last season's undercooked bread. Gossip is currency here as much as honey or eggs, and you wield it carefully. Sometimes a well-placed word can sway a dispute or bolster your standing, other times, a careless comment can spiral into weeks of cold shoulders. Historians still debate whether market days served primarily as an economic hub or a social arena where village hierarchies were reinforced and contested. From your experience, it's definitely both. You balance the serious business of trade with subtle negotiations of power and reputation. As you move through the stalls, the scents assault your senses, the tang of smoked meats, the sweet aroma of baked goods, and the sharp bite of fresh-cut herbs. It's overwhelming, but it's also the pulse of your community. Oddly, some historians note that medieval markets were often dirtier and smellier than the village streets because of the animals and refuse, but no one seems to mind much, it's just part of the chaos. You pause at the herbalist's stall, admiring the bundles of dried plants hanging from the rafters. You pick up a sprig of rosemary, inhaling its sharp scent. You barter some cloth for a handful of lavender and sage, useful for both cooking and medicinal purposes. Between trades, you exchange snippets of news. Did you hear? The Lord's tax collector is coming next week, whispers one woman. Aye, and they say he's brought new laws about hunting rights, replies another. These tidbits ripple through the market, carrying more weight than the coins exchanged. Suddenly, a loud argument breaks out near the alehouse. Two men dispute over a debt, voices rising, faces red. You observe quietly, knowing that sometimes your role is to step in later and help smooth tensions, perhaps with a few choice words or a bit of gossip as leverage. The market is a stage for conflict as much as cooperation. You glance at the sky, the sun climbs higher, signaling the market's peak. Your basket is lighter, your pouch a bit heavier. You smile, knowing that despite the hard bargains and sharp tongues, market day sustains your family and feeds your spirit. An odd medieval fact. Market women were sometimes known to employ market cries, loud, melodic calls to advertise their goods, turning trading into a performance. Imagine trying to out-yell your neighbor with nothing but your lungs and wit. As the crowd begins to thin, you gather your remaining goods and prepare to return home, carrying not just provisions but news, alliances, and a renewed sense of your place in the village web. You weave your way back through the streets, the mud splattering your skirts, your mind already turning to the next task, religious observances that bind the village together as tightly as any market day bargain. The market's bustle fades behind you as you make your way toward the village church, its stone tower rising solemn and steady against the sky. Religion here isn't just about faith, it's the heartbeat of the community, weaving through every moment of your life like the threads you spin or the bread you bake. You slip inside the cool, dim church, where flickering candles cast shadows on worn wooden pews, and the faint scent of incense lingers in the air. The parish priest's voice hums in Latin, unfamiliar but comforting in its rhythm. You don't always understand every word, but the rituals ground you. The Mass, the prayers, the hymns, they tie you to something larger than your daily struggles. Saints' days and religious festivals punctuate the year, bringing moments of joy, reflection, and sometimes a break from the relentless chores. You run your fingers along the carved wooden pew, worn smooth by generations of worshippers. The church is your refuge, a place where worries can be lifted, if only for an hour. But it's also a social stage. Everyone's presence here is a silent statement of faith and belonging. You nod to neighbors and exchange brief smiles, aware that the church is as much about community surveillance as salvation. Religious festivals are something else entirely. The village transforms, stalls appear, music fills the air, and feasts are prepared with whatever bounty the season allows. Even the poorest families find ways to dress in their best, a little extra embroidery or a bright ribbon in the hair. These celebrations mark seasons, saints, and sacred stories, bringing laughter and dance that echo long after the last candle is snuffed out. Historians still debate whether medieval religion served primarily as spiritual guidance or as a means of social control, but from your perspective, it's both, a source of comfort and a framework for order. The church's grip on daily life is tight, but it also offers a sense of hope and connection. An odd little fact, some medieval folks believed that gargoyles perched on church roofs weren't just decoration, they were meant to scare away evil spirits. So, next time you're near a cathedral, don't forget to look up and spot those strange, grotesque faces glaring down. After the service, you linger to light a candle for a sick neighbor, whispering a prayer between the flickering flames. The act feels both personal and communal, a bridge between your efforts with herbs and the divine. Outside, the air is cooler, and the village buzzes again with preparations for the next feast or holy day. You carry a small bunch of rosemary, a customary gift for the church altar, mingling faith and tradition. The rhythm of religious life shapes everything, from when you plant crops to when you break bread. Lent means fasting, Advent means preparation. The calendar is a cycle of faith and survival, and you move with its flow as naturally as you breathe. As you return home, the sounds of church bells fading behind you, you feel the subtle weight of your faith woven tightly with the many roles you carry, a healer, a spinner, a mother, a villager. And yes, sometimes a busybody. The day stretches ahead, full of tasks and hopes, and the church's quiet presence is a steady heartbeat beneath it all. The scent of smoke and wood smoke lingers as you shift your focus toward preserving the fruits of your labor. Food preservation is more than just a skill here, it's a matter of survival, a delicate dance against the merciless grip of winter and famine. You gather vegetables from the cellar, turnips, carrots, and parsnips, their rough skins telling tales of long storage. You know that fresh food won't last, so drying, smoking, and pickling become your allies in the fight against hunger. You hang bundles of herbs and root vegetables near the kitchen rafters, where the warm air helps them dry slowly. The low hum of insects and the faint crackle of drying leaves fills the room. This traditional method requires patience and vigilance. Too much moisture and the crops spoil, too dry and they become brittle and useless. Smoking meats is another crucial task. You prepare strips of salted pork, hanging them over smoldering embers in a specially constructed smokehouse, the pungent aroma seeping into the air. The smoke acts as a preservative, warding off bacteria and extending the life of your precious protein. You've learned that without these techniques, food would rot quickly, and your family would face starvation. Pickling vegetables in brine or vinegar is yet another method in your arsenal. You fill ceramic crocks with cabbage and root vegetables, layering salt and herbs to create a natural ferment. The bubbling sounds from the crocks promise nourishment months ahead. Sauerkraut, anyone? Medieval peasants may not have had the word, but they understood the principle well enough. Oddly, salt was one of the most valuable commodities of the time, not just for seasoning but for preservation. Salt mines were fiercely guarded, and salt was sometimes called white gold. You pinch a bit from your small supply, knowing it's worth more than just taste. Historians still debate whether these preservation methods were enough to prevent widespread famine or if medieval communities lived perpetually on the edge of starvation. What you know is that every preserved carrot or smoked hunk of pork is a victory against the uncertainty of seasons. Your hands work quickly but carefully, aware that a single spoiled batch can mean hunger for weeks. You think back to stories of harsh winters and failed crops, wondering how your ancestors survived such brutal times. Food wasn't just nourishment, it was hope in earthen jars and hanging bundles. The kitchen fills with a mix of aromas, smoke, earth, salt, and something faintly sweet from fermenting vegetables. You inhale deeply, these smells are the essence of survival. They carry the promise of meals yet to come. An odd fact, in some regions, people believed that placing a loaf of bread upside down in the oven would protect the household from evil spirits. Whether true or superstition, you smile at the thought, sometimes rituals are as important as recipes. You pause, glancing at your carefully stacked crocks and drying herbs. The long winter ahead still looms large, but you've done your part. The pantry will hold, the smokehouse will protect, and your family will eat. For now. With the day growing late, you turn to your next set of duties, knowing that managing household finances will require the same vigilance and care as preserving your food. Both are essential for keeping your family afloat in a world that can be as unforgiving as the frost outside. The scent of smoked pork still clinging to your fingers, you settle into the less tangible but equally vital task of managing your household's finances. Coins jingle softly in a small leather pouch tied around your waist, each one hard-won and precious. You are the steward of every penny, the calculator of debts, the balancer of needs and wants. In a male-dominated economy, your role is often invisible but no less crucial. You pull out a worn piece of parchment where you've painstakingly recorded debts owed to and by your family, using a crude tally system of marks and symbols. Literacy is rare here, especially among women, but you've learned enough to keep accounts. You reconcile payments for goods at market, tally expenses for seed and tools, and plan for upcoming feast days or emergencies. Money isn't just metal, it's survival. Silver pennies, though small, are tokens of power and possibility. Barter still dominates village trade, but coins provide flexibility. You haggle fiercely when buying or selling, aware that overspending today means hunger tomorrow. The balance is delicate, and mistakes can cascade into disaster. Historians still debate whether medieval women had real control over household finances or if they merely managed day-to-day expenditures under men's oversight. From where you stand, you wield as much influence as your wit and patience allow. Your negotiating skills at market and with neighbors often tip the scales in your favor. You clutch a small pouch of coins and remember the odd fact that medieval coins were sometimes clipped, shaved down at the edges to steal tiny amounts of precious metal. Counterfeit coins were common, adding another layer of challenge to your careful calculations. Keeping track of debts and credits isn't just for trade, it's also about maintaining social bonds. Lending a few eggs today might mean help with firewood tomorrow. Trust is the currency behind every transaction, and you nurture it carefully. Sometimes, you must negotiate payment delays or barter in kind, an extra loaf of bread here, a handful of herbs there. Your reputation for fairness and reliability is your most valuable asset. Budgeting extends beyond coins to rationing food, fuel, and clothing. You plan meals with scarcity in mind, stretching every ingredient. If the harvest fails or taxes rise, you must tighten belts and manage expectations. You sigh, feeling the weight of these invisible ledgers on your shoulders. The village may praise the Lord or the men who wield swords, but you know who truly keeps the hearth burning and the children fed. In a world where wealth is fleeting and survival is a daily challenge, your careful stewardship is an act of quiet rebellion. An odd medieval curiosity, some households kept money boxes, made of hollowed-out logs or ceramic pots hidden in walls or under floors to safeguard their precious coins from thieves and inquisitive children alike. You tuck your accounts away, ready to step back into the world outside, where your social skills will help smooth disputes and manage the ever-present undercurrent of gossip. The village hums with life as you step back into the social web that binds you all together. Managing disputes and navigating gossip is as much a part of your day as tending fires or mending clothes. You've become a skilled mediator and a subtle wielder of influence, using words and silences to smooth tensions or set things right before they escalate. You overhear two women whispering heatedly near the well, an argument over a missing chicken. You approach with a smile, ready to defuse the tension with tact and humor. Maybe the chicken just wanted a day off, you quip, and the women laugh, easing the mood. Sometimes a joke is your sharpest tool. Gossip here isn't mere idle chatter, it's social currency. You gather snippets of news, who's courting whom, who's fallen ill, who's been less than honest in trade, and use this knowledge carefully. It can build alliances or dismantle enemies, but misuse it, and you risk becoming the target. Historians still debate whether gossip functioned as a form of informal social control or simply as entertainment. From your experience, it's a bit of both, a way to enforce norms and a source of village drama. Your role as mediator extends to family disputes too. You calm a quarrel between your husband and a neighbor over a fence line, reminding them of shared history and common benefit. Sometimes you act as messenger, other times as peacekeeper, always aware that your words carry weight. You remember the odd medieval belief that whispering behind someone's back could literally steal their voice or luck. It makes you chuckle now, but you understand the seriousness with which people approached social bonds. In addition to words, rituals play a part in settling conflicts, shared meals, small gifts, or public apologies. These gestures help rebuild trust and keep the community functioning. You also navigate the tricky waters of village politics. Who supports the Lord, who challenges his decrees, and who quietly undermines the church's authority, all these currents influence daily life. Your subtle diplomacy helps your family stay safe and respected. By afternoon, you sit with a neighbor, sharing a cup of watered ale and trading stories. In these moments, the hard edges of the day soften, replaced by laughter and shared understanding. Your reputation as a fair but firm mediator grows, and you find quiet satisfaction in your ability to keep peace without raising your voice. An odd fact to ponder, in some villages, a gossip stone was used, a physical object passed around during disputes to indicate who had the floor. Imagine needing a talking stick to manage drama. As the sun dips lower, you prepare to assist with seasonal agricultural tasks, knowing that the cycle of work and social navigation is endless but essential. You step away from the center of the village, your role as peacemaker tucked quietly into your heart, ready for whatever comes next. The sun hangs high and hot now, and it's time to step into the rhythm of the fields. Seasonal agricultural work is as relentless as the turning of the earth itself, and you are right there in the thick of it. Planting, weeding, harvesting, these aren't just men's tasks. Your hands, like everyone's in the village, are calloused from tilling soil, gathering crops, and tending animals as the seasons command. You trudge through the furrows, your breath coming in steady bursts as you plant seeds by hand. The soil is dense and heavy with spring's promise, and you push each seed just so, whispering old blessings meant to coax life from the earth. The work is backbreaking, but you know it's the foundation of survival. Without your efforts, the granaries would be empty, and the village would face hunger. You pause to tend to the chickens pecking near the garden edge, scattering grain and keeping an eye on the hens' nests. Their eggs are a small but vital source of nutrition, and you guard them jealously. The animals require daily care, milking goats, collecting eggs, mending fences, all adding layers to your never-ending to-do list. Harvest season is a frenzy. You wield a sickle with practiced precision, cutting golden stalks of barley or wheat, the sharp blades singing through the air. The village comes alive with activity, everyone pitches in to gather crops before the weather turns. You help bind sheaves and carry bundles to the drying racks, your muscles burning but your spirit buoyed by the collective effort. Oddly, some medieval agricultural practices sound downright strange now. For example, farmers sometimes believed that singing to the crops or even whispering secrets could encourage growth. Maybe it was the sound of human presence, or just hopeful superstition. Historians still debate how much control medieval peasants really had over agricultural choices, given the demands of landlords and unpredictable weather. Regardless, your connection to the land is deep and personal, the cycle of planting and harvest pulses through your veins. You take a moment to wipe sweat from your brow and sip from a water skin, savoring the brief respite. The fields stretch wide and golden, the air thick with dust and the scent of ripening grain. It's beautiful and brutal all at once. Later, you help tend the livestock. You check on the cows, ensuring they have fresh water and shelter. The animals are not just property, they are food sources, companions, and crucial to the village's survival. As evening approaches, you and others gather to thresh grain, separating the edible kernels from the stalks. It's tiring work but essential, and you share jokes and stories to keep spirits up. An odd fact, medieval farmers sometimes used ashes from burnt plants as fertilizer, unknowingly practicing early forms of soil enrichment. The day's toil leaves your body weary but your heart full. Agriculture isn't just work, it's a sacred pact with the earth, a promise that life will continue, season after season. You prepare to return home, knowing tomorrow will bring more chores, but tonight, you carry the satisfaction of having helped feed your village. The day winds down, but hospitality never takes a holiday. As the hearth fire softens to glowing embers, you prepare to welcome guests, family, neighbors, perhaps even the Lord Steward if he decides to drop by. Hospitality is not just courtesy, it's a social currency, a way to build alliances, show status, and strengthen bonds that might one day protect your family. You sweep the dirt floor, brush away stray bits of straw, and arrange benches and stools around the table. The table itself is rough-hewn wood, scarred and worn from years of use, but tonight it will bear plates heaped with whatever bounty you can muster. Roasted roots, fresh bread, salted pork, simple fare, but served with care and a warm smile. Preparing for guests involves more than food. You gather fresh herbs to freshen the air and sprinkle lavender and rosemary near the door to welcome good spirits and ward off bad ones. You check that candles are trimmed and ready, casting a soft glow to chase away the creeping darkness. Guests arrive one by one, bringing their own stories and small gifts, a basket of eggs, a jug of ale, a freshly baked tart. Conversation flows easily, punctuated by laughter and the clinking of wooden cups. These gatherings are the village's heartbeat, moments when the hard edges of daily toil soften into community. You listen carefully, sharing news, offering advice, and sometimes gently steering conversations away from topics best left untouched, like the Lord's new taxes or a recent death. Social grace is an art you've mastered, balancing honesty with diplomacy. Historians still debate whether these social obligations were a joyful tradition or an exhausting burden for women. From your perspective, they are both, opportunities for connection but also responsibilities that demand energy you might not always have. An odd medieval custom comes to mind. Some households kept a bewitching broom by the door, believed to sweep away negative energy and protect guests. You laugh softly, knowing your broom is more about keeping the floor clean than warding off spirits, but traditions run deep. You serve the food with practiced hands, careful to ensure everyone has enough. The children sit quietly, eyes wide at the stories shared by elders, tales of battles, miracles, and village legends that stitch the past to the present. As the evening deepens, music begins, a simple lute or a flute, played by one of the younger men or women. Feet tap, voices rise in song, and for a moment, the weight of the world lifts. You watch smiles bloom and worries fade in the warmth of shared company. Hosting guests isn't just about generosity, it's about survival. Building goodwill ensures help when you need it, firewood in winter, a midwife in birth, or a neighbor's strength in hard times. You tuck the children into bed later, the echoes of laughter still ringing softly. Hospitality, you realize, is woven into every thread of your life, as essential as bread or fire. With the house quiet once more, you pause by the window, watching the stars flicker. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but tonight you've nurtured more than bodies, you've nurtured community. The night's calm settles over the village, but your hands remain busy as you turn to crafting and domestic innovations. The everyday demands of medieval life push you to invent, adapt, and create with what little you have. You aren't just maintaining a household, you're engineering solutions, building comfort and efficiency in your own small way. You sit by the flickering firelight, carving a new wooden spoon from a scrap of hardwood. Your knife is blunt, but years of practice make each cut precise. A sturdy spoon means better cooking and less waste, a small but important victory. Nearby, a bundle of reeds waits to be woven into a basket, essential for gathering crops or carrying water. Your mind drifts to other projects, a repaired broken chair, patched leather straps on a water bucket, or the new hinges you fashioned from scrap metal for the larder door. Necessity is the mother of invention, and you're a prolific mother. Historians still debate how much domestic innovation women drove in the Middle Ages, but your hands tell a story of creativity born from scarcity and determination. Tools and household items were expensive and rare, you couldn't afford to wait for a craftsman, so you learned to fix and make what you needed. An odd fact, some medieval households used threshing sledges, made of bone or wood to clean grain, a primitive but ingenious tool you wish you had handy for the harvest. You experiment with dye recipes, mixing plants and minerals to get better colors for your cloth. You're particularly proud of a batch of deep blue fabric dyed with woad, a plant known for its stubborn pigment. Getting the color just right is a triumph, even if the smell lingers for days. Sometimes you help neighbors with their innovations, sharing tips and tools. Your reputation as a handywoman spreads, and you're often called upon to solve small domestic puzzles, how to make a pot less prone to cracking or a loom easier to operate. You remember the tale of a clever peasant woman who invented a foot-powered spinning wheel, freeing hands for other tasks. While historians debate the origin of such devices, the idea fuels your imagination. The night deepens, and you set aside your work, satisfied with your progress. These small innovations don't just improve daily life, they build resilience, enabling your family to thrive despite hardships. As you prepare to rest, your thoughts linger on tomorrow's challenges and the quiet power of creation that you wield every day. The chill of illness and the shadow of death are constant companions in your world, and today, like many days, you face them with quiet strength. The plague whispers through the village like a ghost, touching families indiscriminately, reminding you of life's fragile thread. You tend the sick with worn hands, offering herbs, comfort, and prayers even as fear tightens its grip. A neighbor lies feverish on a straw mattress, skin pale and clammy. You bring a bitter tea of willow bark, hoping its ancient remedy will ease the pain. Your heart aches for the family, but your duties pull you forward. More hands need tending, more souls need care. Medieval medicine is a patchwork of folk remedies and spiritual belief. Bloodletting, prayers, herbal concoctions, they are your tools against an invisible enemy. Historians still debate how effective these treatments were, but your care is the difference between hope and despair for many. The village prepares for burial with rituals both somber and practical. Bodies are wrapped in linen, prayers whispered, and graves dug swiftly to curb the spread of disease. Mourning is a shared grief, a communal act that binds you all even as it tears you apart. An odd fact lingers in your mind: some believe that ringing church bells could ward off the plague, they're tolling a sonic shield against death. Whether superstition or faith, it brings a strange comfort. You move from house to house, your presence a balm to the suffering and a reminder of life's endurance. You light candles for the departed and offer solace to those left behind, your voice steady even when your heart is breaking. Infant mortality is particularly cruel. You cradle a tiny, fragile child, whispering lullabies and blessings, praying for a miracle that often doesn't come. Yet, you hold hope tightly, knowing that love itself is a healing force. The community leans on each other, sharing resources, stories, and strength. Even in darkness, bonds deepen, and resilience blossoms. As night falls, you reflect on the cycles of life and death that shape your existence. The fire's glow flickers, mirroring the fragile flame of hope you carry within. You prepare to rest, your body weary but your spirit unbroken, ready to face another day in this delicate dance of survival. The hearth's embers glow faintly as you finally settle down for the evening, the day's weight slowly lifting from your shoulders. The world outside is quiet now, the village cloaked in darkness except for the flicker of distant fires and the soft rustling of night creatures. You sit by the dying firelight, the familiar warmth a gentle comfort against the chill that creeps through the cracks in your cottage walls. You reflect on the day, the early morning chill, the endless chores, the laughter of children, the taste of fresh bread, the quiet moments of healing and care. Every movement, every decision, every small victory and setback flows into the next, weaving the fabric of your life in this medieval world. There's no grand pause, no moment to truly catch your breath, only a quiet settling before the cycle begins anew. The flicker of flames dances across the worn wooden beams, shadows stretching long and soft. You listen to the distant hoot of an owl and the gentle tapping of rain beginning against the thatch. The smells of smoked meat and dried herbs linger in the air, mingling with the faint scent of damp earth. It's a sensory lullaby, wrapping you in a cocoon of home. You think of the stories you told the children by the hearth, the prayers whispered to saints and spirits, the songs shared at festivals. You imagine the faces of your family, their hopes and fears, the fragile threads that hold you together. The night is a moment of peace, but also a time of vigilance. Dangers lurk in shadow, and tomorrow will demand your strength once more. Historians still debate whether medieval housewives had real agency or were merely bound by tradition and necessity. But sitting here, you know your quiet power, holding family, community, and survival in your hands with steady grace. An odd, soothing fact drifts through your mind. In some villages, people believed that placing a sheaf of wheat by the door at night protected the household from evil spirits. Perhaps it's this simple faith that keeps you going. Your eyelids grow heavy, the day's fatigue wrapping around you like a soft blanket. You breathe deeply, feeling the slow rhythm of your heart, the steady pulse of life in this ancient world. As you close your eyes, the last flicker of firelight fades, and a gentle whisper carries you toward rest. Tomorrow will bring dawn's chill again, but for now, there is peace.